My dear child, do not turn around yet. But there are 3 angels standing behind you right now, and the shadow you have been casting all week is the proof they have been there the entire time. Do not scroll past this. What I am about to reveal will permanently destroy the lie that you have been navigating this season alone. You have been feeling unprotected, uncovered, exposed to whatever is coming without anything standing between you and the impact. And every prayer you sent upward about it seemed to dissolve before reaching anyone who could respond. But your shadow has been telling a different story than your feelings. A shadow does not appear on its own. It requires a source of light standing behind you, something positioned between you and the light that is close enough to cast evidence of its presence onto the ground ahead of your feet. You have been looking at the ground. You have been seeing the shadow, and you have been dismissing it as ordinary when it was anything but. The unexplained warmth you felt last Tuesday, the burden that lifted for no visible reason on Thursday. The moment this weekend when something that should have crushed you was absorbed by an invisible cushion you did not install. Each one was a shadow, the visible evidence of something standing behind you that your eyes could not see, but your ground kept confirming. My beloved child, 3 specific presences have been assigned to stand behind you, not ahead of you, behind, in the space you cannot see, close enough to your back that their proximity produces a shadow your life has been casting without your conscious awareness. 3 angels, 3 assignments, 3 shadows you have been reading as coincidence. Stay here. What I reveal next is what each of the 3 has been assigned to protect, and why the shadow they cast is something you will never mistake for ordinary again. Type shadow if you have been feeling completely alone in this season, and God just told you that the unexplained warmth, the lifted burdens, and the moments that should have broken you, but did not, were the shadow of 3 presences standing behind you that your eyes could not see. Before we go any further, I need to tell you something that genuinely surprised me. A neuroscientist discovered a simple 7-second technique that actually rewires how your brain processes thoughts. And when I tried it, the difference was almost unsettling. My focus sharpened, ideas started connecting faster, and that mental fog, gone. This isn't manifestation nonsense. It's backed by real brain science, and thousands of people are already seeing results. But here's the catch. Only 5 spots are left. If something inside you is saying, try it, trust that instinct. Click the link in the description or pinned comment before it's too late. The 3 shadows have been present in your life longer than this week, but the shadows have grown darker and more defined in the last few days because the angels have moved closer. My beloved child, a shadow's definition is determined by proximity. When the source of light stands far behind you, the shadow is faint, barely detectable, easily dismissed as a trick of the eye or a shift in the atmosphere that carries no significance. But when the source moves closer, the shadow sharpens, deepens, becomes so defined that the shape of what is standing behind you can almost be identified by the outline it casts on the ground ahead. Your shadow's just sharpened. And the sharpening means the angels have stepped closer than they have ever been. I need you to understand why the 3 moved closer this week specifically. It is not routine. Angels assigned to stand behind a person do not adjust their proximity without orders. The standing distance is calibrated to the level of covering the person requires in their current season. Standard seasons produce standard proximity. But what you are entering, what is forming on the horizon of your life right now, required the commander to issue an order that brought all 3 presences 1 step closer to your back simultaneously. The increased proximity is not casual, it is tactical. My dear one, the moments this week that produced the sharpest shadows, the warmth that was warmer than usual, the rescue that was faster than usual, the lifted burden that was more complete than usual. Those were the result of angels who are now operating at a proximity so close that the gap between their presence and your body is measured in spiritual inches. Something is coming that requires this level of covering. And covering at this proximity is reserved for seasons where what is approaching the person from the front is significant enough to justify 3 angels at full proximity behind them. What I reveal next is the specific assignment each angel carries, and why all 3 were moved closer at the same time. Type closer if you have noticed that the unexplained interventions in your life have intensified this week. Warmer warmth, faster rescue, more complete relief. And you now believe the 3 angels behind you just moved closer, because what you are about to face requires maximum proximity covering. I have been watching you walk through this season, convinced you were uncovered, while 3 shadows followed every step you took, my dear one. Not from a command center, from directly above the formation, looking down at a person walking forward with the heavy, exposed, unprotected posture of someone who believes there is nothing standing between their back and whatever might come, while 3 presences moved in synchronized formation behind them, casting evidence of their existence onto the ground. The person kept stepping on without recognizing what they were stepping through. You have been walking on the evidence of your own protection and calling it coincidence. My beloved child, I watched you pray 3 nights ago. Not the kind of prayer that rises with confidence, the kind that crawls. The kind spoken by a person whose spiritual posture has collapsed to the floor under the weight of feeling utterly alone in a fight they are no longer certain God is paying attention to. Your words carried the specific cadence of someone who is addressing a ceiling they suspect is solid, rather than a heaven they trust is open. The ceiling is not solid, and the 3 angels behind you heard every word before it left your mouth. I have been watching you specifically, not the crowd that feels generally unprotected. You, the one whose specific combination of burden and isolation has produced a spiritual posture so compressed that the shadow of 3 angels standing at full proximity behind you cannot be perceived by a person who has stopped looking at the ground for evidence of covering because they concluded the covering does not exist. The covering exists. It has existed for longer than the season that made you doubt it. And the 3 presences standing behind you right now were assigned to your back on when you were not carrying anything heavy at all, not as a response to your crisis, but as a pre-positioned formation for a season I could see approaching long before you entered it. You were covered before the weight arrived, and the covering has not moved once since. Type pre-positioned if you just realized that the 3 angels were assigned to your back before the heavy season began, and the covering was never a response to your crisis, but a pre-positioned formation God placed behind you because he could see what was coming before you entered it. I know what the feeling of being uncovered has been doing to the way you move through your days, my beloved child. You do not move the way a covered person moves. A covered person walks forward with a specific kind of confidence, not arrogance, but the settled awareness that whatever comes at them from any direction will encounter something other than their bare skin before it makes contact. They take risks because their back is secured. They step into unknowns because their rear is guarded. They face what is coming with the posture of someone who does not need to protect what is behind them because something else already is. You have not been walking like that, and I have been watching the difference. You walk with the posture of someone who is guarding their own back, the constant, exhausting, 360-degree vigilance of a person who believes that If they do not watch every angle simultaneously, something will reach them from the direction they were not looking. Your eyes scan, your body stays tense, your decisions carry the cautious calculation of someone who cannot afford to move forward freely. Because moving forward means turning your back on something, and turning your back when you believe it is uncovered feels like an invitation for impact. My child, the vigilance has been draining you more than the actual threats ever could. I saw the night the exhaustion reached its peak, not from the burdens themselves. You have carried heavy things before. From the vigilance, the specific, spiritual, unrelenting effort of monitoring every direction for threats that a covered person would never waste energy scanning for, because the three presences behind them handle the directions the person cannot see. You have been doing the work of three angels with a single human nervous system, and the system was never designed to sustain that load. The tiredness you cannot explain, the depletion that sleep does not fix, the sense that your energy is being consumed by something invisible that you cannot identify or address. That is the cost of self-guarding in a season where 3 guards were already assigned and already standing and already casting shadows you kept stepping over without recognizing. The loneliest part of feeling uncovered was not the exposure itself. It was the silence from heaven that seemed to confirm the exposure was intentional, my dear child. You asked for protection, specifically, out loud. In the dark rooms where your prayers have been crawling rather than rising, you said the words, "Cover me, protect me, do not leave me exposed in this season," and the silence that followed the request produced a conclusion so devastating it restructured how you relate to the God you were praying to. He heard and chose not to cover me. That is the conclusion. And it has been sitting in your chest like a stone. Because if God is able to send protection and chooses not to, the only remaining explanations are cruelty or indifference. And neither of those can coexist with the love you were taught to expect from a father. So the stone sits without a theological framework to support it, and without an emotional capacity to dissolve it, and you carry it every day beneath a performance of faith that no longer believes what it is performing. My beloved child, the silence was never confirmation of your exposure. The silence was the sound of a covering, so close it does not need to announce itself. I watched you interpret the silence as absence when the silence was actually proximity. The 3 angels behind you do not produce audible confirmation of their presence. They produce shadows, and shadows are silent. The warmth they cast is not accompanied by a voice that says, "We are here." The burdens they absorb are not followed by a notification that reads, "Protection activated." They operate in the frequency of evidence rather than the frequency of declaration. You were looking for a declaration. They were providing evidence, and the gap between what you were listening for and what they were producing is where the loneliness has been living. The evidence was always there, on the ground, in the warmth, in the burdens that lifted, in the moments you survived that you should not have survived. You were reading the evidence as luck. It was shadow, type not silence, if you have been interpreting heaven's quiet as proof of abandonment. And you are beginning to understand that the silence was not absence, but the sound of a covering so close it communicates through shadow rather than declaration. The feeling of being uncovered was never the reality of being uncovered. It was this perceptual limitation of a person who cannot see behind themselves, my beloved one. I need to address the fundamental design element that has been creating the gap between what you feel and what is real. You were not built with eyes in the back of your head. That is not a flaw. It is intentional engineering. A person who could see behind themselves at all times would never need to develop trust in what is covering their back. They would operate on sight rather than faith. and I designed you for faith. The specific, costly, evidence-based but not sight-based trust that what is standing behind you is real, even though your forward-facing eyes cannot confirm it. Your inability to see the three angels is not proof they are absent. It is proof you are designed to trust. And the shadows, the evidence that has been appearing on the ground ahead of you, those were not given as decoration. They were given as the faith-compatible proof that a forward-facing person can access without turning around. You do not need to see the angels to know they are there. You need to read the shadows they cast. And every shadow you dismissed as coincidence was a faith-compatible confirmation that your design was producing evidence your perception was not yet trained to interpret. My dear child, the season of feeling uncovered served a purpose I did not design but chose to redeem. The felt absence of covering drove you to a place of spiritual desperation that produced prayers your comfortable seasons never generated. Prayers so raw and so honest that they reached a depth in my heart that polished petitions never access. The loneliness produced an authenticity in your communication with me that protection-confident prayer does not carry. Your desperation reached me, and it reached me at a depth that changes what I can release into your life from this point forward. The shadows never left, the covering never moved, and the feeling that produced the deepest prayers of your life was the perceptual cost of a design that positions protection where trust is required to perceive it. The shadows on your ground are doing something right now they have never done before. They are converging, my beloved child. Until this moment, the three shadows operated independently, each angel casting their own distinct evidence at different moments throughout your day. One producing warmth, another producing burden relief, the third producing the unexplainable survival of moments that should have destroyed you. You experience them as separate, unrelated incidents of almost good luck, scattered across different days, without a pattern your perception could organize into meaning. But the three shadows are merging into one, and the merging means the formation has changed. I need you to understand what a converged shadow means in the language of divine covering. Three separate shadows indicate three angels standing at standard spacing behind a person, each covering their assigned sector, each operating independently, each producing evidence that arrives at different moments. But when the commander issues a convergence, order the three presences close formation, moving from standard spacing to shoulder proximity, and the three individual shadows merge into one, deep, unmistakable, impossible to desist shadow. My child, a converged shadow is darker than three separate ones, and darker shadows mean denser covering. Something about this specific week prompted the convergence order. The season you are entering requires a density of covering that three individual shadows cannot provide. A unified rear guard that operates as a single wall of protection behind your back rather than three independent posts with gaps between them. The gaps have closed. The formation is unified. And the shadow you are casting right now is the deepest shadow your ground has ever received. You may have felt it today. A heaviness behind you that is not oppression. A presence at your back that is not threat. The specific sensation of something standing so close behind you that if you took one step backward, you would make contact with it. That feeling is not your imagination. That is the converged formation producing a shadow so dense your body is beginning to detect what your eyes cannot see. Type converging if you have felt something intensifying behind you today, not threatening but protecting, and you now believe the three angels just closed formation into a unified wall of covering that is producing the deepest shadow your life has ever cast. Three angels are standing behind you right now, and the reason the title asks you to turn around slowly after watching this is because what your spiritual perception is about to register will require the steadiness of someone who has been prepared for the revelation, my dear one. Turning around is not a physical instruction. It is a perceptual one. What I am building toward in this message is the moment your spiritual awareness rotates from its fixed forward-facing position, the position that has been scanning for threats it was never designed to guard against, and perceives for the first time what has been standing behind it since before the heavy season began. The turn must be slow, because fast turns produce shock, and shock prevents absorption. My beloved child, this is directly connected to the title and to your specific journey. The aloneness you have been feeling is a forward-facing perception. Everything you experience when you look ahead, the exposure, the vulnerability, the sense that nothing stands between you and what is coming, that is the view from the front. The view from the back is entirely different. And the difference between the two views is the difference between feeling alone and being alone. You have been feeling alone from the front. You have been covered from the back. And the three angels standing behind you right now are not generic protectors dispatched from a general angelic pool. Each one was selected for a specific assignment that corresponds to a specific dimension of the season you are navigating. One is assigned to your emotional covering. One is assigned to your physical protection. One is assigned to your spiritual rear guard. 3 dimensions of exposure, 3 dedicated coverings, 3 shadows that have been landing on your ground at different moments, because each angel's shadow appears when their specific dimension of protection is activated by a threat approaching from the direction they are assigned to guard. The convergence means all 3 dimensions are being activated simultaneously, and what activates all 3 dimensions at once is what I have been preparing you to face from a position of covering rather than exposure. Your spiritual perception is beginning to rotate right now, slowly, exactly as I instructed, and the first edge of what is standing behind you is becoming visible for the first time. My beloved child, can you feel it? Not with your physical senses, with the part of you that has been carrying the lie of aloneness for months and is now encountering something that the lie cannot coexist with, a warmth at your back that is not temperature, a density behind you that is not weight, a presence so close that your spirit is registering proximity before your perception has completed the turn. You are mid-rotation, and what you are beginning to perceive is already overwhelming. I need you to stay steady. The instinct when spiritual perception encounters something this close and this large is to flinch, to revert to the forward-facing position, because forward is familiar and behind is unknown, and the unknown at this proximity triggers a reflex your survival system has been running since the lie of aloneness was installed. Do not flinch. What is behind you is not threat. It is the opposite of threat. And the reflex that wants to turn you forward again is the last defense of a lie that cannot survive the completion of this turn. My dear one, the turn is almost complete. Your perception has rotated past the point where the converged formation is detectable as a presence and is approaching the angle where it becomes identifiable as 3 distinct beings standing shoulder to shoulder in a wall so close to your back that the shadow they cast does not land on the ground ahead of you anymore. It lands on you. The shadow is on your body now, not on the ground, on you, because the proximity required for this season has brought the 3 presences close enough that the shadow no longer projects forward, but falls directly on the person it is covering. The next thing I speak is the moment the turn completes, and what your eyes perceive will end the lie of aloneness permanently. Type turning if you can feel your spiritual perception rotating right now, sensing something behind you for the first time, and you know the completion of this turn will reveal a covering so close. It has been casting its shadow directly onto your body. The turn is complete, and what is standing behind you is so close and so real and so undeniably present that the lie of aloneness just shattered on contact with a truth your perception can no longer deny. My beloved child, 3 angels, shoulder to shoulder, directly behind your back, so close that the warmth you have been dismissing as emotional fluctuation is actually their proximity radiating into the space between their position and your spine, so tall that the shadow they cast has been falling over your entire life without you understanding why certain moments felt covered when nothing visible was providing the covering. They have been there the entire time, every second of the season you called alone. This is the moment, the bone-deep loneliness of someone who believed they were navigating without any invisible support, encounters the reality of 3 specific presences who have been standing in the exact space the loneliness said was empty. The space is not empty. It has never been empty. And the feeling that told you it was empty was the perceptual limitation of a person whose eyes face forward while the covering was positioned behind. You were looking the wrong direction for what was always standing in the right one. 3 angels are standing behind you right now. The first, assigned to your emotional covering, has been absorbing impacts that should have reached your heart, but arrived dulled. Every moment this season where the pain should have been sharper than it was, that was this angel's shadow. The second, assigned to your physical protection, has been intercepting threats that should have reached your body, but were redirected before contact. Every narrow escape you attributed to luck was this angel's shadow. The third, assigned to your spiritual rear guard, has been blocking attacks aimed at your faith that should have destroyed your belief, but landed weakened. Every moment you survived that you should not have. Every burden that lifted without reason. Every impact that was absorbed before it reached full force. Shadow. 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 All 3, standing right behind you, exactly where you thought no one was. Now that your perception has completed the turn, and the 3 presences are identified, everything about how you experience this season is being restructured from the back forward, my dear child. This is what happens when a person who has been living as uncovered discovers they have been covered the entire time. The restructuring does not begin at the front, at the circumstances, the challenges, the threats that were producing the feeling of exposure. It begins at the back, at the foundational awareness of what is standing behind you, because the back determines the front. A person who knows their back is covered faces the front differently than a person who believes their back is exposed. Your back just became the most secured position in your entire life, and the front is about to respond. The 360-degree vigilance that has been consuming your energy is being permanently decommissioned, not gradually. The moment the turn revealed what was behind you, the vigilance lost its justification for existing. You were scanning every direction because you believed no direction was covered. The revelation that 3 dedicated presences have been covering the directions you cannot see means the directions you can see are the only ones requiring your attention. My beloved child, your scanning just reduced from 360 degrees to 180, and the energy that was being consumed by the eliminated half is being returned to your available reserves immediately. You are about to feel a surge of capacity that has no visible cause. Energy returning from a budget that was being spent on self-guarding that the 3 angels were already providing. Attention being released from sectors that were already covered by presences whose assignment includes the exact directions your exhausted vigilance was trying to monitor. The energy was never gone. It was misallocated, and the reallocation changes everything. because the capacity that was being wasted on monitoring covered positions is now available for the forward-facing assignments that your calling actually requires. Type reallocation if you can feel the exhausting vigilance beginning to power down. Energy returning from directions you no longer need to guard. Because the three angels behind you have been covering the sectors your scanning was trying to protect. Let me show you what your life looks like now that you know what is standing behind you, and the vigilance has been decommissioned, my dear one. The first thing that changes is your posture. Not your physical posture, although that may shift too. Your internal posture. The compressed, defensive, guarded stance of someone who has been bracing against impact from every direction is being replaced by the upright, forward-facing, released posture of a person who knows their back is covered, and their only assignment is to walk toward what is ahead. You are going to stand taller inside yourself, and the standing will feel almost foreign. The mornings change immediately. You have been waking into a 360-degree threat assessment. Your first conscious moments consumed by the automatic scanning of every area of your life for the danger you believe is approaching from the direction you were not watching while you slept. Tomorrow morning you will wake into a 180-degree horizon. The back half of your awareness will be at rest, not asleep. At rest. The specific, guarded, delegated rest of sectors that are being monitored by presences whose assignment began before your alarm went off. My beloved child, you are about to experience mornings that do not begin with scanning, and the difference will reshape your entire day. The decisions that have been paralyzed by the feeling of exposure are going to unlock. You have been hesitating at every forward step because moving forward means turning your back on something, and turning your back when you believe it is uncovered means inviting impact from behind. But a person who knows three angels are covering the directions they cannot see steps forward without the hesitation that exposure produces. Your steps are about to become decisive. Not reckless decisive, the specific, grounded, shadow-informed decisiveness of a person who can commit their full attention to what is ahead, because what is behind has been permanently assigned to someone whose whole existence is to guard it. People are going to notice the shift in your posture before you tell them what caused it, because a person who knows their back is covered carries an atmosphere that a person guarding their own back never could. My beloved child, the ones who watched you navigate this season with the compressed, exhausted, hyper-vigilant posture of someone carrying the full weight of their own protection. They are going to see the compression release, not into carelessness, into a settledness so unusual on your frame that the people who know you best will detect it within days. They will say you seem different. They will mean you seem covered. My child, there is a specific quality that a person carries when they know they are not standing alone. It is not confidence exactly, it is deeper. It is the atmospheric output of a human being who has encountered the reality of their own divine covering and can no longer produce the frequency of abandonment that their body was previously broadcasting into every room they entered. Your frequency just changed from uncovered to covered, and covered frequencies attract different responses from the world. Connections that could not form while your uncovered frequency was broadcasting are going to begin approaching. There are people whose assignments require proximity to a covered person. People who have been sensing something about your life that they could not approach because the frequency of aloneness you were emitting was producing an instability field that made close connection feel unsafe. The instability field just collapsed, and what approaches a stable field is fundamentally different from what approaches an unstable one. Opportunities that require the decisive forward movement of a person whose back is secured are going to present themselves. Doors that respond to approach rather than hesitation. Invitations that require the committed step of someone who is not dividing their attention between what is ahead and what might be behind. Your full attention is available for what is ahead now. And what is ahead has been waiting for a person whose three angels freed them to face forward completely. Type covered frequency if you believe that the atmospheric shift from uncovered to covered is going to change what approaches your life, attracting connections and opportunities that could not form while the frequency of aloneness was broadcasting from a person whose back is now guarded by three angels. I need you to understand why I assigned three angels to your back rather than one, my beloved child, because the number reveals something about what you carry that the feeling of aloneness nearly erased from your awareness. One angel is standard covering. It is the baseline assignment for a life that carries standard weight purpose. Most people walking through most seasons operate under the covering of a single presence, whose shadow appears in occasional moments of unexplained protection. A near miss here, a softened blow there, a moment that could have gone wrong, but did not for reasons that defy natural explanation. You were not assigned standard covering. You were assigned triple. My child, the number of angels assigned to a person's back is not arbitrary. It is calculated against the weight of what their life is designed to carry and the intensity of what will come against them as they carry it. A single angel is dispatched for a life whose purpose draws moderate opposition. Three angels are dispatched for a life whose purpose draws the kind of opposition that requires a converged formation to withstand. You drew the kind of opposition that requires three, and that tells you everything about the weight of your purpose. Do you know what your life is designed to carry? Not in the abstract. Specifically, the assignment embedded in your existence is not a light thing that a single covering could protect. It is a heavy thing, a significant thing, a thing whose arrival on the earth drew attention from forces that recognized its threat potential before you ever became aware you were carrying it. The three angels were assigned because the one thing you carry justifies the three things guarding it. My dear one, you have been walking through this season believing you are ordinary, one more person navigating one more difficult chapter without anything remarkable about their story that would warrant extraordinary covering. But ordinary people do not receive triple assignment. Ordinary purposes do not draw converged formations. And ordinary lives do not cast the kind of shadow your ground has been receiving every single day of this season. You are not ordinary. The shadow proves it. The doubt that is forming right now is using the most familiar weapon in its arsenal. The argument that you are not important enough to warrant three angels, my child. It sounds like this. Three angels behind me specifically sounds like a message designed to make anyone feel special. Everyone who hears this will believe it applies to them personally. The idea that the God who manages the universe would allocate three dedicated presences to one ordinary person's back, while billions of people navigate their own difficult seasons with no covering at all feels mathematically irresponsible and theologically implausible. That doubt just applied human resource limitations to a God whose resources have no ceiling. And I am going to dismantle it with one observation about your own experience. Explain the shadow. My beloved child, the doubt can argue theology. It can debate the plausibility of angelic allocation. It can construct a rational case against the mathematics of divine coverage. But it cannot explain the shadow. It cannot account for the moments this season where something intervened without visible cause, where pain that should have been sharper arrived dulled, where a burden that should have crushed you was absorbed by something your natural senses could not identify, where you survived what should have broken you and could not explain the surviving to yourself or anyone else. The shadow is the evidence the doubt cannot process, because the doubt's framework operates on visibility. If I cannot see it, then it does not exist. But shadows are visible. You have seen them. You have felt them. You have walked through moments of inexplicable intervention that your rational mind filed under luck because it lacked a better category. The category is covering, and covering that produces consistent, repeated, specifically timed evidence of intervention is not luck operating at a statistically improbable frequency. It is the shadow of something standing behind you that your forward-facing eyes cannot see, but your ground keeps confirming. Type "explain the shadow" if the doubt just tried to argue that 3 angels is implausible, and you cannot explain the moments of inexplicable intervention in your life using any framework other than the one that says something has been standing behind you, casting evidence of its presence onto your ground. During every moment you believed you were standing alone, the 3 angels were not at a distance, waiting for a command to approach. They were already behind you, already touching the space your back occupies, already producing shadows your ground was already receiving. My beloved child, you imagined a God who heard your prayers about feeling uncovered and dispatched a response from a distant location, who processed your request through a spiritual system that takes time to deploy resources, who received the cry of a child saying, "I feel alone," and began the logistical work of moving protection from heaven's reserve toward an exposed person on earth. That picture misunderstands everything about how covering works. The 3 angels were not dispatched in response to your prayer about aloneness. They were already behind you before the prayer was spoken. The prayer was not a request that initiated their arrival. It was a cry from a person who did not know what was already standing at their back. A cry that grieved me, not because it revealed a need I had not addressed, but because it revealed a perception that had not yet discovered what I already provided. My child, every prayer you prayed about being uncovered was prayed by a covered person. There were specific moments during this season where the covering was tested at its maximum capacity, moments where what was coming at you from behind was intense enough to require all 3 angels at full engagement simultaneously. You felt those moments as the heaviest hours of your hardest days, the hours where the weight was almost unbearable, and then, without transition, without explanation, it decreased by a margin that your coping strategies cannot account for. That margin was the 3 angels absorbing what your back could not sustain. You thought you were carrying everything alone. You were carrying the portion your frame was designed to hold. The portion beyond your design capacity was being absorbed by 3 presences, whose assignment includes carrying what the person in front of them cannot. They carried with you, every day, through every hour you called alone. The shadows on your ground were their receipts. I know the exact moment this season when the shadow was darkest on your ground, my dear one. And I know it because that was the moment all 3 angels pressed closest to your back simultaneously. There was a night, you know which night, the night when the weight of everything you were carrying converged into a single hour that exceeded your capacity so completely that your body responded before your mind could process what was happening. Your chest tightened, your breathing shortened, your hands trembled with the specific vibration of a nervous system that has reached the absolute boundary of what it can sustain without external support. My beloved child, you thought you survived that hour on your own. You did not. In that hour, the 3 angels executed what heaven's covering protocol calls a compression formation. Standard proximity was abandoned. The 3 presences moved from close to flush, pressing against your back, with a coverage so complete that no gap remained between their position and your body. The shadow they cast in that hour did not land on the ground or on your body. It merged with you, became indistinguishable from your own outline, because the covering and the covered occupied the same space. That is why the hour did not break you, because during the minutes where breaking was the only natural outcome, the three presences absorbed the overage by occupying the exact space your body occupied, carrying from within rather than from behind. I know the way your breathing returned to normal without any conscious technique being applied. That was the first angel restoring the rhythm your lungs lost. I know the way the tightness in your chest released without the passage of enough time to justify the release. That was the second angel absorbing the pressure your chest could not contain. I know the way sleep finally came that night when sleep should have been impossible. That was the third angel covering your consciousness with a rest your circumstances did not authorize. 3 angels, 3 interventions. One night you almost didn't survive, that you survived completely. Type that night if God just described a specific night you remember, the one where you almost broke and then inexplicably did not. And you now know the reason you survived was 3 angels pressing so close to your back they merged with your own outline and carried what your body could not. Now that you know what is standing behind you, there is one thing I need you to do, my beloved child, and it is the simplest instruction a covered person can receive. Stop guarding your own back. The energy you have been spending on the 360-degree vigilance, the scanning, the bracing, the constant calculation of which direction the next threat will arrive from. That expenditure must cease, not because vigilance is wrong, because redundant vigilance is waste. And guarding directions that are already covered by 3 dedicated presences is the most expensive form of spiritual waste a person can engage in. Release the back. Assign it to the 3 who are assigned to carry it. My child, I know how difficult this instruction is. You have been self-guarding for so long that the vigilance feels like a load-bearing wall in your daily functioning. Removing it feels like removing something structural, like the system will collapse if the scanning stops. But the scanning is not structural. It is compensatory. It was installed to compensate for a covering you did not know existed. And compensation for something that is already provided is not strength. It is duplication. Stop duplicating what heaven already staffed. When the instinct to scan behind you activates tomorrow, and it will activate because the reflex is deeply patterned, do not obey it. Instead, practice the turn, the internal, perceptual, spirit-level rotation that this message taught you. Turn your awareness toward the 3 presences and let their proximity register. Let the shadow confirm what your reflex denies, and then return to facing forward with the full attention of someone whose back is no longer their responsibility. The practice will feel unnatural at first. Self-guarding has been your default for so long that releasing it will produce the anxiety of a person who just set down a weapon in what they believe is a war zone. But the war zone behind you is occupied by 3 warriors. You do not need the weapon. You need the rest that releasing it provides. You made it to the turn, my beloved child, and I need you to stand facing the 3 presences long enough to feel what it means to discover you were never standing alone. Feel them, not as a concept, not as a theological truth you file under things I believe. As a proximity your spirit is registering in real time. 3 presences, 3 assignments, 3 coverings that have been positioned at your back through every moment you labeled alone, producing shadows you dismissed as luck, absorbing impacts you attributed to personal resilience, carrying portions of your weight you credited to your own strength when your own strength was never designed to hold that much. You were never as strong as you thought you were. You were always more covered than you knew. I want to thank you for something the aloneness made almost heroic in its quiet endurance. Thank you for walking forward when you believed nothing was behind you. Thank you for taking steps into the unknown when you thought your back was completely exposed. Thank you for praying into what felt like a solid ceiling when three presences were standing close enough to hear your breath without needing the prayers to travel any distance at all. My dear child, walking forward while believing you are uncovered is the bravest thing a human being can do, and you did it every single day of this season. Let the tears come, not tears of pain, tears of the specific, overwhelming, almost unbearable relief of someone who just discovered they were never carrying what they thought they were carrying alone. That the strength they were so proud of was actually the combined output of one human being and three angels whose shadows have been the real reason the ground held and the back survived and the night did not break what the morning found still standing. The aloneness was a lie. The covering was the truth. And the truth has three shadows that will follow you for the rest of your life. Type never alone if tears are forming from the overwhelming realization that you have not been standing alone for a single second of this season. And the three shadows that have been following your every step are the most permanent evidence of divine covering your life has ever received. You are not the person who walks uncovered anymore, my beloved child. That identity, the one who entered every room scanning for threats from every direction, the one who carried the bone-deep exhaustion of a person guarding their own back with a nervous system never designed for 360-degree vigilance, the one who prayed for covering while standing inside it, the one who read shadows as luck and warmth, as coincidence and survival as personal resilience, when all three were the evidence of angels whose assignment has never wavered for a single second. That identity died the moment your perception completed the turn, and the three presences became undeniable. You are a covered person now, and covered is permanent. The lie of aloneness that shaped your posture, your decisions, your prayers, and your capacity for an entire season has been permanently dismantled by a revelation it cannot survive. Because the lie required the absence of evidence to sustain itself, and the evidence was never absent. It was on the ground, on your body, in the warmth, in the lifted burdens, in the nights that should have broken you but did not. In every moment you survived that your own strength could not account for. My dear child, the evidence was always louder than the lie. You simply had not been taught to read it. From this moment forward, you carry the identity of someone who knows what is standing behind them. Not hopes, not believes theoretically, knows with the experiential, body-registered, shadow-confirmed knowing of a person who turned around and perceived with their own spiritual awareness the three presences that have been covering their back since before the hardest season of their life began. You will never unknow this. The turn cannot be reversed. And the person who walks forward from this moment carries a posture the aloneness could never have produced. The upright, released, forward-focused posture of a human being whose back is permanently assigned to three angels who have never once considered stepping away. Three shadows, three coverings, three assignments that were written before the season began and will outlast every season that follows. You are not alone. You were never alone. And the ground beneath your feet has been telling you the truth in shadow language since the first day the three took their position. Waiting patiently for the moment their person finally learned to read what was written there all along. Turn around slowly, my beloved child, not in fear, in awe, because what is standing behind you has been standing there longer than the lie told you they were absent, and they are not going anywhere. Subscribe to this channel so that every time the three angels behind you cast a shadow that carries a message, the revelation reaches you. before the lie of aloneness has time to misinterpret it as coincidence. You are not someone who walks uncovered anymore. You are someone with three presences at your back, whose shadows follow every step. The next message carries the first assignment from a God who can now direct you forward, knowing you finally understand what has always been standing behind. Type 3 shadows if you are leaving this message permanently changed, knowing the aloneness was a lie, the covering was always real. 3 angels have been standing behind you, casting evidence of their presence onto your ground since before the heavy season began. And you will never again look at an unexplained warmth or a lifted burden or a night you inexplicably survived without knowing it was the shadow of something divine that has never once stepped away from your back.